Every year, the Pro Football Hall of Fame welcomes a new group of legends into Canton. And every year, a few more names get left behind. Names that meant everything to their teams, to the game, to the history of football itself, but somehow still sit on the outside looking in. This video isn't about the obvious snubs or fan favorites with short careers. This is about the forgotten greats. The men who dominated for over a decade, racked up accolades, terrified opponents, and still haven't gotten the call. These aren't fringe cases. These are Hall of Fame talents with Hall of Fame resumes, and yet, no bust, no gold jacket, no justice. Today, we're counting down the players who deserve more than just a footnote. Because for every legend in Canton, there's another left in the shadows, and it's time we bring those legends into the light. Starting with a linebacker built for immortality. It was 1960. The NFL championship, Franklin Field. The Packers, led by a young Vince Lombardi, had the ball, the momentum, and the mystique. But when it mattered most, it wasn't Bart Starr or Jim Taylor who had the final say. It was Maxie Baughan, a rookie linebacker out of Georgia Tech, who stood tall, stuffed the run, and helped the Eagles snatch a title from a dynasty before it ever began. That moment, that stand, should have been the opening chapter of a Hall of Fame legacy. But for Maxie, it turned out to be a prologue to a career the voters still pretend never happened. Maxie Baughan entered the NFL as the 20th overall pick in 1960. He wasn't a hype machine. He didn't talk loud or play in a major media market. But the man was a coach's dream and a quarterback's nightmare. From day one, he anchored the middle of Philadelphia's defense like he had been there for a decade. 9 Pro Bowls. 2-time All-Pro. He was the kind of player who made the hard things look routine, the kind who set the tone with his fists, his brain, and a motor that refused to cool. His rookie year wasn't just good, it was historic. He recorded 3 interceptions, earned Pro Bowl honors, and helped deliver the Eagles their last NFL championship before the Super Bowl era. That wasn't a footnote, that was a legacy-defining season, and it was just the beginning. After 5 years in Philly, Baughan was traded to the Rams, where he became the heartbeat of one of the most feared defenses in football. He started 147 of his 147 games. No excuses, no missed assignments, just relentless, intelligent football. During his time in Los Angeles, he played alongside names like Merlin Olsen and Deacon Jones. But if you ask those Hall of Famers who led the defense, they'll tell you it was Baughan. Now let's talk numbers. 9 Pro Bowls. That's more than several linebackers already enshrined in Canton, including Harry Carson, Chris Hanburger, and Dave Wilcox. Baughan was a finalist for the Hall multiple times. Each time, the voters blinked. They remembered the stars, but not the star maker. They celebrated the loud and the flashy while forgetting the man who outplayed most of them in silence. Some will say he didn't win enough titles, but he played in an era where the postseason was a one-game showdown, not a month-long gauntlet. Others say he didn't have the stats. But let's be clear, most of his prime came before tackles and sacks were officially recorded. If you watch the tape, the story was obvious. He was everywhere. And if you ask the men who lined up across from him, they knew not to test number 55. Not unless they wanted to spend the rest of the game coughing up grass. He stood 6'7", weighed over 300 pounds, and moved like a man half his size. Jacoby wasn't just big, he was monumental. A mountain in motion, clearing the path for one of the most dominant run games the NFL had ever seen. When Washington fans think of glory, they think of the Hogs. That legendary offensive line that turned cold weather football into a fistfight. And Jacoby was the cornerstone, the blueprint, the first Hog. But despite all the wins, all the dominance, all the rings, Jacoby is still waiting for the Hall of Fame to catch up to what everyone else already knows. The story starts in 1981. Undrafted, unwanted, just a massive tackle out of Louisville who didn't look like the prototype and didn't come from a college powerhouse. Washington took a flyer on him, and what followed was a masterclass in proving people wrong. From the jump, Jacoby made his presence felt. He earned a starting job his rookie season, anchoring the blind side for Joe Theismann and later Doug Williams and Mark Rippon. No matter who was under center, they all knew one thing. Number 66 had their back. Jacoby wasn't a finesse guy. He didn't dance or dazzle. He mauled. He buried defenders. He drove them off the ball and into the ground. And in the freezing cold of January football, when passing attacks froze and games came down to blood and willpower, Jacoby and the Hogs never blinked. They opened holes wide enough for John Riggins to rumble through untouched, controlled the lines so completely that Washington could dominate time of possession, and turned playoff games into slow, methodical beatdowns. He played in 4 Super Bowls, won 3, went to 4 straight Pro Bowls, was named first-team All-Pro in 1983, and from 1982 to 1991, Washington had the most feared offensive line in the league, a unit that dictated games instead of reacting to them. You don't win 3 titles in a decade without greatness in the trenches, and yet somehow Jacoby, the literal face of that unit, hasn't been given his place in Canton. Now look at the Hall of Fame tackles from his era. Gary Zimmerman, great player, 2 fewer rings, 1 less Pro Bowl. Jimbo Covert, respectable, but only played 8 seasons. Jacoby played 12. Anthony Munoz, no argument there, he's the gold standard. But if Munoz is the bar, Jacoby is right behind him. And yet when the final votes are cast, his name keeps coming up short, over and over again. The numbers are only part of the story. The eye test tells the rest. When Washington beat Miami in Super Bowl 27, it was Jacoby who sealed the edge on Theismann's blindside. When they embarrassed Denver in Super Bowl 22, it was Jacoby who manhandled defenders to give Doug Williams time to rewrite history. This wasn't just pass blocking. This was historic dominance, delivered with bruised knuckles and unshakable resolve. It's one of the most iconic images in NFL history. Joe Montana rolling right, flicking the ball into the San Francisco sky, and Dwight Clark reaching up for the catch. But zoom out just a bit, look closer. The man trailing Clark, the one who almost got there, the one left staring into the end zone as history was made, that was Everson Walls. And for too many people, that moment defines him. But it shouldn't. Because if you look past the highlight, past the heartbreak, you'll see a cornerback who wasn't just good, he was historic. And the fact that Everson Walls still isn't in the Hall of Fame is a failure of memory, not merit. Walls didn't enter the NFL with a red carpet laid out. He went undrafted in 1981, too slow, too raw, too unpolished. But the Dallas Cowboys gave him a shot anyway, and all he did was lead the entire league in interceptions. As a rookie, 11 picks, nobody else had more. Not just that year, but that decade. Walls led the league in interceptions 3 different times during the 1980s, something no other player has done in the Super Bowl era. Think about that. The goal of a cornerback is simple: take the ball away. And no one did that better than Everson Walls when he was in his prime. His second year, 7 interceptions. Third year, another 9. And he wasn't just padding stats against backups or playing zone every snap. He shadowed top receivers. He played in man coverage. He took risks, baited throws, and made quarterbacks pay for their arrogance. He was instinctive, patient, clutch. By the time his career was done, he had 57 interceptions. That's more than Champ Bailey, more than Aeneas Williams, more than Mike Haynes. All of them are in the Hall of Fame. Walls is not. And that brings us back to the narrative. The catch has followed him like a ghost. With that one moment, that single play has unfairly overshadowed a career of brilliance. What people forget is that Walls was there. He wasn't burned. He didn't blow coverage. He was inches away from a pass that Montana himself admitted was meant to be thrown away. But narratives are powerful, and for some reason, people decided to remember Walls not for leading the league in picks, or for making Pro Bowls in 3 of his first 4 years, but for being the guy under Dwight Clark. And in 1990, he got the ultimate validation. He helped New York win the Super Bowl, starting in a defense that held the high-flying Bills to just 19 points. That ring should have been the final bullet point on his Hall of Fame resume. But here we are. Everson Walls checks every box. Longevity, production, peak dominance, team success. The only thing he didn't have was hype. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't a first-round pick. He just played football at an elite level for over a decade and then quietly walked away. January 10th, 1982, Riverfront Stadium. Wind chill below 0. It's the AFC Championship game, but history remembers it as something else. The Freezer Bowl. Most players could barely feel their fingers. Ken Anderson, he threw for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns like he was playing in perfect autumn weather. He outdueled Dan Fouts, captained a no-huddle offense in the most unforgiving conditions imaginable, and led the Cincinnati Bengals to their first Super Bowl appearance. That day should have cemented his legacy. Instead, decades later, Ken Anderson is still waiting for the Hall of Fame to open its doors. And it makes no sense. Anderson was drafted in 1971, 3rd round, no buzz. No spotlight, just a small school quarterback from Augustana College in Illinois, a place better known for math majors than quarterbacks. But Cincinnati saw something, and pretty quickly, the rest of the league did too. Anderson didn't look the part, he wasn't flashy, didn't have the cannon arm, but he was deadly accurate, smart, and totally unshaken by pressure. In 1974, he led the NFL in passer rating. 2 years later, he did it again. By 1981, he wasn't just leading, he was dominating. That 1981 season wasn't a good year. It was one of the most complete quarterback performances in league history. Anderson threw for over 3,750 yards and 29 touchdowns. He led the league in completion percentage, passer rating, and yards per attempt. He won MVP. He won Offensive Player of the Year. And he did it in an era when defensive backs could maul receivers and quarterbacks were regularly thrown to the turf like crash test dummies. Let's compare. Ken Anderson finished his career with 4 league passing titles, more than Troy Aikman, more than Jim Kelly, more than Terry Bradshaw. He ended with a career passer rating of 81.9, which may not seem high by today's standards, but at the time of his retirement, it was second only to Joe Montana. And unlike many QBs of his era, Anderson evolved. When Bill Walsh's West Coast offense was still in its infancy, Anderson was its first test subject. Years before Walsh took it to San Francisco, he installed it in Cincinnati, using Anderson as the prototype. That means the offense that revolutionized football, the system that turned Montana into a legend, got its start with Ken Anderson under center. And it worked. So what's the knock? What's kept him out? Some say it's the lack of rings. He went to 1 Super Bowl, didn't win. But if that's the standard, then explain how Dan Fouts got in, or Warren Moon, or Jim Kelly, all great players, all ringless, all Hall of Famers. Anderson's numbers are right there, and in some cases, better. He threw fewer interceptions, he completed more passes, he was the more efficient quarterback. It's the most infamous wrong way run in NFL history. A fumble recovery, a sprint to the end zone, and Jim Marshall spiking the ball in triumph, only to realize he just scored a safety for the other team. That moment, that one bizarre play has followed him for decades. But here's the thing, if that's all you know about Jim Marshall, you've missed one of the toughest, most reliable, and most iconic players the game has ever seen. Because behind the blooper reel lies a Hall of Fame career built on grit, leadership, and nearly 2 decades of absolute dominance in the trenches. Marshall wasn't a flash-in-the-pan edge rusher. He was the backbone of the Minnesota Vikings Purple People Eaters, a defensive unit so terrifying it felt like something out of a Norse myth. Alongside Carl Eller, Alan Page, and Gary Larson, Marshall helped create a defense that didn't just stop offenses, it broke them. And he wasn't just part of the machine, he was the machine, the emotional leader, the Iron Man, the enforcer, the guy who never came off the field no matter how battered or bruised he was. From 1961 to 1979, Marshall started 270 consecutive games. That's not a typo, 270 straight starts as a defensive end in the most physically brutal era of football. Add in playoffs and it jumps to 282. That was an NFL record for position players at the time, and even today, it's almost unthinkable. Players now get pulled for load management. Jim Marshall played through injuries that would have landed most guys on injured reserve. Torn muscles, dislocated fingers, busted ribs, didn't matter. He suited up, strapped on the helmet, and went to war. And this wasn't just longevity without impact. Marshall was a force. He unofficially recorded 130.5 sacks in his career. Sacks weren't tracked until 1982, so his numbers are estimated, but film and team stats back them up. That total would put him among the top 25 sack leaders ever. He recovered 30 fumbles, scored touchdowns, forced turnovers, and never stopped coming. He was relentless, he was feared, and he was respected by every quarterback who had to stare him down. He played in 4 Super Bowls, won none, and that unfortunately is one of the knocks against him. But let's be honest, are we really going to punish a player for reaching 4 Super Bowls with a team that had no championship pedigree before he arrived? If getting to the mountaintop matters, Jim Marshall climbed it more than most. He didn't lose those games. He helped put Minnesota in position to be there in the first place. Let's talk Hall of Fame comparisons. His teammate Carl Eller is in. Alan Page is in. Both deserving, but Marshall started more games than both, played longer, and had comparable production. Other defensive ends with similar sack totals, guys like Ricky Jackson, Richard Dent, Charles Haley, are all in. Marshall not only belongs in that conversation, he helped define it. Picture this. It's 3rd and long, the crowd in Baltimore is foaming at the mouth, and the quarterback knows what's coming, but he still can't stop it. Off the edge comes Terrell Suggs, helmet low, arms pumping, eyes locked on his target like a predator in a blood feud. He crashes through the line, snatches the quarterback mid-throw, and buries him. The play ends with a roar from the crowd and another tally in Suggs' ever-growing sack total. This wasn't just a highlight, it was a ritual. And for 17 seasons, NFL quarterbacks lived in fear of number 55. Terrell Suggs didn't sneak into the league. He kicked the door in. Drafted 10th overall in 2003 out of Arizona State, he arrived in Baltimore already wearing the aura of a problem. He was only 20 years old, but played like a veteran who had spent a decade in the trenches. In his rookie year, he had 12 sacks. That wasn't a promise of potential, that was proof of dominance. And from there, he never looked back. Suggs was the bridge between 2 generations of Ravens greatness. He came in as Ray Lewis and Ed Reed were defining Baltimore's identity, and when they were gone, Suggs carried the flame. He was more than just a pass rusher. He was the emotional thermostat. When things got cold, Suggs brought the fire. He talked trash with conviction, played with fury, and delivered hits that echoed through stadium walls. But let's talk numbers. 139 career sacks. That puts him tied for 9th all time. He had 7 seasons with double-digit sacks. He forced 39 fumbles. He recovered 14. He even snagged 7 interceptions because apparently tormenting quarterbacks wasn't enough. Sometimes he just took the ball himself. He won Defensive Rookie of the Year. He made 7 Pro Bowls. He was named first-team All-Pro in 2011, the same year he was crowned Defensive Player of the Year. He was a monster in the regular season, but even more terrifying when everything was on the line. The 2010s Ravens didn't make their playoff runs off finesse. They dragged teams into a ditch and beat them with their own helmets, and Suggs was always in the middle of it. When Baltimore won Super Bowl 47, it was Suggs chasing Kaepernick, clogging lanes, breaking pockets. He wasn't just part of that title, he was one of the reasons they got there in the first place. Now here's where it gets weird. Suggs has the stats, he has the hardware, he has the awards, the longevity, the postseason impact, and yet there's already a creeping suspicion that he may not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's insane. There was a moment deep in the heart of the 1990s when the Dallas Cowboys didn't just dominate the NFL, they ruled it with cold precision and brute force. The stars of that dynasty were easy to spot. Aikman, Emmett, Irvin, all Hall of Famers, all immortalized in bronze. But in the shadows of the spotlight, patrolling the back end of the defense like a hawk with bad intentions, was Darren Woodson, a safety who could hit like a linebacker, cover like a corner, and lead like a general. He wasn't just great, he was essential. And yet somehow, he's still waiting for a call from Canton that should have come years ago. Woodson joined the Cowboys in 1992, a second-round pick out of Arizona State with speed, toughness, and instincts you couldn't teach. He walked into a loaded roster, legends in every room, and within a year, he wasn't just starting, he was starring. From his second season on, he became the glue that held the defense together, a hybrid safety before the NFL even had a name for it. He was physical enough to stuff the run, fast enough to cover tight ends downfield, smart enough to quarterback the secondary, and fearless enough to take on anything that moved. Opposing offenses never knew what to expect. Blitz, zone, man coverage, Woodson could do it all, and usually better than anyone else on the field. Over the next decade, Dallas won 3 Super Bowls. Their defense was ferocious, fast, and full of swagger, and Woodson was right in the center of it. He was named to 5 Pro Bowls, earned 3 first-team All-Pro selections, and retired as the Cowboys' all-time leading tackler. That's not a typo. Not DeMarcus Ware, not Randy White, not Leroy Jordan. Darren Woodson sits at the top of the list with over 1,350 tackles. He didn't miss games, he didn't make excuses, he just made plays. He played 178 games in a Cowboys uniform, almost all of them as a starter. He racked up 23 interceptions, 11 sacks, 17 forced fumbles, and 12 fumble recoveries. His stat sheet didn't just have check marks. It had impact across every single defensive column. And he didn't just flash once or twice, he was consistent. For over a decade, week after week, Woodson gave Dallas a competitive edge that coaches around the league envied, and yet he's not in the Hall. Some say his numbers aren't flashy enough, but context matters. Woodson played in an era when safeties weren't just roaming center field and waiting for picks. He played in the box, he played man coverage, he took on fullbacks head on and then sprinted out to cover a slot receiver the next snap. He was a weapon disguised as a defender. Drafted first overall in 2004, after an awkward draft day standoff, Eli entered the league with expectations baked in gold. He was a Manning, royalty, but unlike his brother, he didn't walk into a stable system. He walked into the New York media firestorm, a franchise in transition, and a fan base that had seen one too many false dawns. Early on, he was inconsistent, up and down, some brilliance, some baffling decisions. But underneath the surface was a player who refused to break. And then came 2007. The Giants limped into the playoffs as a wild card, rode underdogs from the jump, but Eli turned it into something else that postseason. He didn't just play well, he outdueled Jeff Garcia, Tony Romo, and Brett Favre on the road, then slayed the undefeated Patriots in one of the greatest upsets in sports history. Super Bowl MVP, cool under fire, and suddenly the goofy kid with the blank stare had a ring and a legacy. 4 years later, he did it again. Another postseason run, another Super Bowl, another showdown with Tom Brady. And once again, Eli was calm, surgical, and clutch. Super Bowl MVP again. That throw to Mario Manningham down the sideline, one of the greatest passes ever thrown in a title game. Not flashy, just perfect. But Eli's story isn't just about rings. It's also about endurance. He started 210 straight games, never missing time due to injury. He finished with 57,023 passing yards, more than Dan Fouts, Joe Montana, Troy Aikman, and Steve Young. He threw 366 touchdowns, good for top 10 when he retired. He's one of only 5 quarterbacks in NFL history with multiple Super Bowl MVPs. The other 4, Brady, Bradshaw, Montana, and Starr, are all in Canton. So why the debate? The interceptions, the 500 record, the seasons where the Giants finished 6-10 and Eli looked more confused than confident. He led the league in picks 3 times. His career, statistically, is a tug-of-war between undeniable highs and frustrating lows. And that's what gives voters pause. He was never the best quarterback in the league, rarely even top 5. But when the lights were brightest, he was unbeatable. There's a moment in every Colts game from the 2000s where the camera would pan to number 87 streaking down the sideline, hands sure, steps crisp, eyes locked on the ball like it was drawn to him. Reggie Wayne wasn't the loudest voice in the huddle. He wasn't the fastest guy on the field, but if the game was on the line, if Peyton Manning needed a first down, a big play, or a touchdown in traffic, Wayne was the one he trusted. And yet, for all the catches, all the yards, all the big game moments, Reggie Wayne is still waiting on Canton. He joined the Colts in 2001, a first-round pick out of Miami, and stepped into a system already humming with talent. Marvin Harrison was the established star, Peyton was ascending, and the expectations were high. For his first few years, Wayne played his role quietly, efficiently, patiently. But by the mid-2000s, he wasn't just complimenting Harrison. He was matching him, sometimes surpassing him. From 2004 to 2010, Wayne was one of the most consistent, productive receivers in the NFL. He had 7 seasons of over 1,000 yards. In 2007, he led the league with 1,510 receiving yards. He made 6 Pro Bowls and was named first team All-Pro. He caught everything. Deep outs, slants over the middle, sideline toe taps and double coverage. Wayne's game was pure substance. He wasn't about highlights. He was about trust, timing, and torching defenses who knew the ball was coming his way and still couldn't stop it. By the end of his career, Reggie Wayne had amassed 1,070 receptions, good for 10th all-time when he retired. He had over 14,000 receiving yards, more than Michael Irvin, Calvin Johnson, and Andre Reed. He scored 82 touchdowns, played in 2 Super Bowls, and helped the Colts win it all in 2006. He showed up in the playoffs too. His 93 postseason receptions ranked 2nd all-time, trailing only Jerry Rice. Let that sink in. When it mattered most, Reggie Wayne delivered like few ever have. Before Cooper Kupp, before Justin Jefferson, before the era of precision slot work and explosive yards after catch monsters, there was Torry Holt. Smooth, explosive, and unstoppable. He wasn't just part of the greatest show on turf, he was one of its engines. The Rams offense in the early 2000s didn't just score points, they redefined football. And Torry Holt, with his Velcro hands and effortless stride, was their most consistent weapon. So why, more than a decade after his final snap, is he still not in the Hall of Fame? Drafted 6th overall in 1999, Holt made an immediate impact. Rookie year, Super Bowl champion, but that was only the beginning. From 2000 to 2005, no wide receiver in football was more productive. 6 straight seasons with over 1,300 receiving yards, 4 years with 100 or more receptions. He led the NFL in receiving yards twice, including a jaw-dropping 1,696-yard season in 2003. That number still ranks among the highest ever. By the end of his career, Holt had over 13,000 receiving yards and 74 touchdowns. That's more than Lynn Swann, more than Michael Irvin, more than several receivers already in Canton. He was a 7-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All-Pro, and at one point, the fastest receiver to 10,000 career receiving yards.
But Holt's greatness wasn't just about numbers. He passed the eye test with flying colors. He ran routes like poetry in motion. He had arguably the best hands of his generation. He played through injuries, never complained, and made life easier for teammates, quarterbacks, and coaches alike. Isaac Bruce might have been the elder statesman, but Torry Holt was the engine that kept the Rams' high-flying offense running at warp speed. So what's the holdup? Some say his peak was too short. Others argue he was overshadowed by teammates. But if you watch the tape, if you remember what he meant to that offense, you know better. Torry Holt didn't just rack up stats. He dominated a golden age of receiver play. Those are just 10 players who have a great case for deserving to be in the Hall of Fame. If you enjoyed, press the like button and let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of the video. Check out our last upload about NFL families with multiple generations of players.